One winter day in the city of Newark, a mysterious event began to unfold. Straight from the sky, genderless snow-white creatures descended to the ground, dubbed angels by the locals. No one understood why they arrived on Earth and what aim they were pursuing.
They were wingless creatures with bony fingers and hollow eyes.
However, life went on, and people quickly adapted to the presence of mystical guests among them. On Christmas Eve, a man named Brian spends a long time examining a shelf of dolls before settling on one. At the moment of payment, the cashier accidentally drops the change from her hands. Several coins clatter to the floor, triggering unpleasant memories for Brian. In a subdued state, he returns home. Opening a bottle of beer, he starts wrapping presents. He signs one for his daughter Tabitha and carefully places it under the Christmas tree. After finishing her work shift, his wife Amy returns and emotionally recounts her day. She asks Brian to get ready so they won't be late for a meeting. Brian remains seated in his chair and tells his wife that he's not feeling well and would prefer to stay home. Amy is disappointed by his words and tries to convey the importance of their presence in the meetings. She believes that connecting with people who have also lost their children can help them cope with the loss. Brian loses his composure and shouts at his wife. He is convinced that they have nothing in common with the people in the group because their daughter is still alive. Amy decides not to argue with her husband and goes to the meeting alone. Brian attends a hypnosis session to recover memories of the day his daughter disappeared. He recalls picking up Tabitha from ballet class, and they went to a cafe for ice cream. While paying for the purchase, the girl noticed a dog outside and asked her father to let her go out to play with the pet. Brian agreed, warning the girl not to go too far. In just a few seconds of distraction by the coins accidentally dropped on the floor, Brian exited the cafe to find that his daughter had disappeared, leaving her ice cream behind. During the recount, Brian begins to grimace from painful memories. In desperation, he ran down the street, questioning passers-by about Tabitha, but no one had seen her. Suddenly, a black minivan appears in his memory, parked near the cafe. The hypnotist insists that Brian make an effort to remember the license plate. Focusing on that moment, he finally recalls the necessary information. Holding the sheet with the number in his hands, he heads to the police station. The officer greets Brian warmly, but his expression changes sharply when he learns the purpose of the visit. Despite a whole year passing since his daughter's disappearance, the loving father doesn't lose hope that she can still be found. The officer assures him that the detective is actively investigating Tabitha's case and won't rest until results are achieved. His words give Brian a glimmer of hope. At the meeting, Amy shares a touching story about Tabitha. The girl passionately loved ballet and, despite her young age, earnestly wanted to become a professional ballerina. She dreamed of beautiful brown toe shoes, but only pink ones were sold in stores. Filled with love for his daughter, Brian took brown markers and hand-colored the shoes. Despite the obvious forgery, the daughter was thrilled with her new ballet shoes. Now, those markers serve as a sad reminder of her since her disappearance. Parents criticize Amy for participating in meetings for those who have permanently lost their children when Tabitha's fate remains unknown. She decides to end her story and leaves the meeting with a heavy heart. At that moment, the detective leading Tabitha's case contacts her. In her eyes, a glimmer of hope flashes. Perhaps her daughter is finally found. However, the detective informs her that he plans to check the license plate remembered by Brian during hypnosis. While the idea seems somewhat crazy to him, it could lead to a decisive breakthrough in the search for the missing girl. The woman gets into her car, trying to calm her emotions after what she heard. Suddenly, the silhouette of a girl in a ballet outfit rushing toward abandoned buildings catches her eye. Thinking it might be Tabitha, the excited Amy instinctively follows her. She finds herself inside a warehouse that a homeless person has turned into temporary housing. Next to a sleeping man is a cart, and despite a bad feeling, Amy decides to approach it. Peering inside, she horrifically discovers the head of a creature from the sky, subjected to a cruel act of violence. Upon returning home, Brian confronts his distraught wife but doesn't attach much importance to it. Mechanically opening the marker cabinet, he discovers that they are missing. In panic, he turns to Amy and asks where the markers are. In a quiet, melancholic voice, the woman tells her husband that their daughter is no longer alive.
Babe, she's gone. I feel she's gone in the air, and I can't feel her anymore.
Brian gets angry with Amy and refuses to acknowledge her harsh words. He condemns his wife for giving up easily and losing hope. He is confident that their daughter could come back at any moment. However, Amy insists that he face reality. Tabitha disappeared over a year ago, and there's no chance they'll ever find her. The next morning, Brian receives a call from a detective who informs him that the identity of the owner of the black minivan has been determined. Armed with information about the suspect's address, Brian decides not to wait for the results of the investigation and heads to the suspect's home himself. This action ends in tragic consequences. Brian is arrested for unlawful entry. At the police station, Amy learns that her husband's lead was useless. At the time of Tabitha's disappearance, the minivan owner wasn't even in town. Fortunately, Brian